All right, it's been a while. Wow, okay. I don't know how I'm gonna start this. What the f? All right, so this is the Poker Flops poker vlog. I'm Dylan. You may know me from the TikTok on Poker Flops or Instagram. You may also know me from Poker Police. If you know me from there, you're an OG. It's been about 2 years since a video has been posted there. Always knew that I wanted to get back to poker vlogging. We're gonna see how the pilot episode goes, which is this one. A little bit about me, 22 now. Definitely not a professional poker player. Poker doesn't need to be serious. It's meant to be fun. You're gambling, you're having fun, you get a couple drinks in you, and yeah, that's how I like to play poker. So let's get right into it. So welcome again to the first Poker Flops poker vlog. I went over to Philly Live with $300 in a dream, bought in for the full 300, playing 1-3 no limit hold'em, and let's get right into it. First hand I sit down with is none other than 6-9 offsuit, so obviously I had to play it. It's fate, right? I'm in the cutoff, 2 limps to me. I decide to raise it up to $6. Yes, I know, not very GTO of me. I'm sorry, Poppy GTO.
That's preposterous. That is a shocking atrocity that is the way.
The button calls, small blind calls, big blind calls, the 2 limpers call, and we had 6 ways to a flop with the pre-flop nuts, 6-9 offsuit. The flop comes 6-3 king rainbow. It checks around. I'm happy because I have zero business being in this hand. The turn is a 7 of spades. The small blind leads out for $15. The big blind calls. A player in middle position calls. I end up calling because why not? Now we go 4 ways to a river. River is the 2 of hearts. It checks around to me. I'm last to act in the cutoff. I think about putting in a big bluff to buy the pot, but with it being 4 ways and it being my very first hand, I decided to just check it down. Small blind shows a 7 and takes down the pot. The very next hand, in the hijack, I look down at king-queen offsuit and decide to raise it up to $6. Cutoff calls, button calls, small blind raises to 20. I call, cutoff calls, and the button call again. We go 4 ways to a flop. Flop comes deuce, king, 6, rainbow. Small blind leads out for 40. I call after it takes me a minute to count out some chips because it's been that long since I sat at the table. Cutoff folds, button folds, and we go heads up to a turn. The turn comes the king of hearts. So I improve tremendously. Small blind looks at the board for a second and checks. I decide to check in hopes that he leads out on the river, so heads up to the river. River is the 4 of clubs. It changes absolutely nothing for my hand, still likely dominating anything still in, so I decide to bet 50 into a $160 pot. The small blind thinks for a second and decides to lay it down, so I scoop the pot and we head to the next hand. About an hour of folding goes by and I wake up with ace-5 offsuit on the button, 1 limper who is under the gun. I raise it up to $10, small blind calls, big blind calls, under the gun calls, 4 ways with $40 in the pot to a flop. Flop comes 6 ace 9, 2 clubs and a diamond. It checks to me. With top pair, I decide to lead out for $15. Small blind folds, big blind calls, under the gun calls, 3 ways to a turn with $85 in the center. Turn comes the 3 of spades, big blind checks, under the gun checks. I decide to check. Looking back, I should be hammering this turn with a bet. I allow flush draws to stick around and risk getting beat on the river. Anyways, 3 ways to a river. River is the king of hearts. Big blind takes a look at my stack and then checks. Under the gun leads out for 30 into about $85. I call, and to our delight, as soon as the chips cross the line, under the gun says, "You're good, I have a king." He had king 10 of clubs, missed his draw, but improved to a pair on the river. I definitely played the hand poorly by letting him see the river card for free, but that's poker. I scoop a $145 pot. In this next hand, I'm on the button with ace 10 of hearts. There's 4 limpers to me, which is the whole table because we're only 5-handed. I raise to $15, small blind folds, big blind folds, under the gun calls, cutoff calls, 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes 7 queen ace rainbow, checks to me. I bet $35. Both players end up folding and I take down the pot. Here I am in the big blind with ace queen offsuit. There's an under the gun straddle, folds back to me in the big blind. I raise it up to 15, under the gun calls, and we go heads up to a flop. If you really squint your eyes, you can see an ace in the window. I didn't catch the rest of the board, but I begin to reach for chips and to put out a bet, and under the gun folds before I can even decide what I'm putting out there. So I take down the pot happily. In the big blind with an under the gun straddle and a call from late position, I decide to call with 10-7 off. I decide to check in the dark. Flop comes deuce 3-7 rainbow. It checks around. Turn comes the 10 of hearts. Now I'm sitting with 2 pair on a shit board. There's not a chance in hell I'm behind here. In an attempt to just get some kind of value, I lead with a $15 bet. Under the gun, who loves action and definitely thinks he's a pro, calls. Late position folds. heads up to a river. Bang! The river is another 10. All of a sudden, I have a full house, and I take some time to think, and end up putting out a $60 bet. Now, this guy who watched rounders one too many times,
I got a full house.
tanks for a full minute, stares me down trying to get whatever read he thinks he has. He then proceeds to fold and say nice bluff. He then tries to guess what I had, to which I just grin and continue to stack some chips. Under the gun, I wake up delightfully with 2 red bullets and decide to lead out for 10 bucks. Meanwhile, Under the Gun +1 is saying he's got a spreadsheet that he brings with him to craps tables so that he has an edge.
I would walk up to Ted with my spreadsheet and place my bet. They didn't like that, did they?
You say spreadsheet?
No.
What, do you got the game solved?
I don't have it solved, but I make what's called a prop bet.
I don't know how that works, but hey, to each their own. The wannabe pro from the last hand is in middle position, calls the $10. The older gentleman who's also in middle position calls. Button calls, big blind calls, so we had 5 ways to the flop. Flop comes Queen, King, Jack, Rainbow, and wow, is that a scary board for aces. Most face card combinations are ahead with 2 pair. There's potential straight draws out there, so big blind checks. I decide to bet 25 around half pot. I don't want anyone seeing anything else for free. Everyone ends up folding, and I take it down. This is the final hand of the vlog, and it's also the final hand of the session, and it ended up being my favorite hand, Jack 9. Jack 9 offsuit specifically, on the button with some limpers ahead. I decided to make it $15. The small blind calls, big blind calls, middle position calls, cutoff calls. We go 5 ways with Jack 9 off, less than ideal, but let's see what happens. Flop comes Jack 10 Queen 2 clubs. Now, I have bottom pair with an open-ended straight draw. I'm also blocking a lot of club draw combinations with the Jack of clubs in my hand. I could be in worse spots, so it checks to me and I decide to lead out for $45. I'd be happy to take down the pot here at best case, but I'm hoping for most of the remaining players to fold. Playing a hand like this multi-way is tough. It folds around all the way to the cutoff, who ends up making the call, and we head to the turn, heads up. The turn is a 3 of diamonds, so it doesn't change much. It's less than ideal, but could be so much worse. Cutoff checks to me. I cannot let him see another card for cheap, so after some thinking, I decide to put out a $100 bet. In my head, this shows absolute strength or a strong draw. He ends up making the call, so we head to a river, again, heads up. The river is the 5 of diamonds, so again, changes almost nothing. He checks. Now I, for a split second, think about putting a bet out there, but then I stop myself. What am I hoping he calls me with? A 3? A 5? Anything that calls my river bet likely has me beat, so I decided to just check it down. I tabled a pair of jacks and the cutoff mucks. He immediately huffs and puffs and says, I totally could have gotten you off that. And yeah, to be honest, he probably could have if he bet big on the river. He said he had a club draw, which is best case scenario in this hand for me. I beat nothing other than a strong draw that misses, but hey, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Before we head out of the casino, we're going to make things a little bit spicy, a little bit entertaining, a little bit degenerate. Try and do something that's our own and we can make our own as the Poker Flops team and Poker Flops Poker Vlog. So we head over to the roulette table and we place a bet on numbers 6 and numbers 9, and we will wait for the spin, $10 on both. And of course, it hits double zero, and we walk out minus $20 on the roulette table, but up $230 from the poker table. All right, well, first session is in the books. First time I played in over a year. In for 300, out for 550 at the poker table. We went and placed that Degen Bet for 20 bucks, ended up losing that, so the bankroll stands at 530. Not bad for the first session back in a year, like I said. 2 hours put in and 250 out, not bad. See you guys next time.